Okay, Robin. Oh, yeah.
Are you well, Geshe?
I'm well, Robin.
Good,
I'm
good,
well.
good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the monastery, we have yesterday and day before yesterday, we have cases, but not very, very serious. And we're doing all our best to keep as, as much as we can to keep safe. And yeah, it is very serious, but you know, the Tibetan community here in the south, Balagupi, have cases maybe, and not that huge, but have new cases, and there are some fatalities, and I mean, there isn't that much I can add more than what you see on the news. Yes, it is very serious, but we're doing our best to keep safe. Yes. Okay, great. Yeah. So now we will start this this class, and we will start with the making sure our motivation, intention to join the class is a positive, constructive motivation, such as the mind taking refuge and the altruistic awakened mind, bodhicitta, which is, you know, having these two mind as a follower of the teachings of the Buddha, and within his teachings, the Bodhisattva and the teachings. So having these two minds, not only at the beginning of the this kind of gathering, but also as you all know, at the beginning of the day, in fact, as many times as possible during the day, and so forth. So that is where we are going to start, our gathering. And the first two lines, Sanje Chetan, Tsoki Chonamla, Changju Pardo Dani Gyapsu Che, the first two lines, help us to hold the mind taking refuge in three jewels. The first line help us to hold the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And the second line help us to hold, the until enlightenment is experienced, to take refuge in Buddha as a mentor, as a teacher, and to take refuge in Dharma as a actual means, methods to be applied in our daily lives, to be experienced, and to take refuge in Sangha as a spiritual friends, supporters. So that is, that kind of strong, clear, the mind will occur, will arises when we have good understanding of the qualities of the three jewels, and also good understanding of the nature of this unenlightened existence. So these two realizations, realizing the qualities of the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha, and realizing the nature of unenlightened existence, these two realizations will lead us to take refuge. So, that's the first two lines. Then, dagi jinso jibe, tsonamji, dola penjir, sanje dobar show, the last two lines, they help us to hold the bodhicitta, the altruistic awakened mind. That is, a very, generally speaking, from our heart, genuinely, sincerely cares, concerns, well-beings of all living creatures, and not just mentally cares, concerns, but also practically involving, supporting other living beings whom they need our support, whatever support that we can give. So that is the last two lines. Dagi jinso jibe tsonamji, dollar pension sanje show. So we will say those four lines 3 times together. Sanje cheda tsoje chonama la chanjo pado dane jazo che dagi chenso jibe tsonama ji dola penje sanje dobara sho. Sanje chedan tsoje chonama la chanjo pado dane jaso che dagi chenso jibe tsonama ji dola penje sanje dobara sho. Sanje cheta tsoje chonama la chanjo pado dane japso che dagi chenso jibe tsonama ji dola penje sanje dobara sho. Oh, yeah. So we will recite Chenrezig mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, 6-syllable Chenrezig mantra. And while we are reciting the mantra, people who have, who are familiar with the image of Chenrezig, Avalokiteshvara, either 4 arms or 1,000 arms, whichever is, familiar with you, imagine in front of you or on top of your head, whichever is convenient for you. And at the same time, to from our heart have a strong sense of compassion, towards all living beings, and particularly those living beings who are going through lots of difficulties, and particularly, the people who lost their lives due to the COVID-19 or some other disease, and also the people, who are in the hospital, going through receiving treatments or and also the family members who are in behind, having lots of difficulties due to losing their loved ones. So hold a strong sense of compassion with the image of Avalokiteshvara in front of us or on above our head. And from there, with recitations of the mantra and, with the sound, to send all the strong compassion towards all living beings. Mm. Mane Oh, yeah. Mhm. Now, this time, we are going to read another beautiful prayer. This one, this prayer, which is translated in English, the title of the prayer, Prayer for Birth in Sukhavati, Realm of Bliss. In Tibetan, Melam. It is written by this great Tibetan master in the 14th century, Tsongkhapa, who had written many great texts, and in fact 18 big volumes of texts were written by Tsongkhapa. Most of those 18 volumes are very, very important and the precious texts. And there are also these beautiful prayers, short prayers, and this is one of those beautiful short prayers that in the Gelug tradition we say this very frequently, and particularly when we say prayer for the people who for the sake of people who passed away. We say this prayer, and it is not that long, but we will spend a little bit of time, not to rush too much. We'll spend a little bit of time, but also it is not that difficult to to understand. The quite what you call there isn't that deep, hidden philosophical meanings need to be explained. Very beautifully written, quite easy to understand. But sometimes it is good to have, some interpretations, explanations, and also traditionally, when these oral transmissions, from Tsongkhapa to some of his direct followers, disciples, like first the Dalai Lama and so forth, then passed down to generation after generation. And I have received oral transmission, this text from several great teachers, including two great tutors of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and also some other great teachers. So, that I had great opportunity to receive the oral transmission. So that, though I don't myself don't have any deep realization or any that kind of amazing understandings, but receiving from those great teachers, directly from those great teachers, and also from age 13, 14, memorize, and then constantly every now and then to say the prayer, so that have that sort of little bit the understanding and experience. So this kind of prayer, prayer for birth in Sukhavati. Sukhavati is Sanskrit term, and that is translated here in English, realm of bliss, and Dewachen, Dewa bliss. Dewachen means having bliss. So having bliss, and here they translated realm of bliss. So there are many what you call this type of prayer are available, all the different Buddhist traditions, and this one, and among those, what you call the prayers, some are related to the Vajrayana practice, and some are related to more Sutrayana practice, not very much associated with the particular Vajrayana deities, not in that way. And this one belongs to the second one. That means, the prayer for birth in Sukhavati, this prayer mainly associated with the Sutrayana practice, not directly connected to the Vajrayana practice. So in other words, to say this prayer, individuals don't need to receive any empowerment or any initiation, and also, to say the prayer, not necessarily to involve particular visualizations or the so on and so forth. It is really beautiful prayer, that you will see, when we start to read. And before to read the text itself, one thing which we need to make clear to ourselves when we talk about these specific, the topics like, the prayer to be born in Pure Land or to be born in a realm of bliss, we need to we have to have, in our background understanding, the teachings of the Buddha, the general structure of the teachings of the Buddha. That is something very, very crucial. So particularly here, I would like to say, to remind or to encourage to the people to have the understanding of the Buddha's first teachings, that is the Four Noble Truths. And here, within the Four Noble Truths, here it is very directly related to the third and the fourth Noble Truth. The historical Buddha, Gautama, clearly and very detailedly explained to the living beings, to his followers, to really to experience, to actualize, what you call if we use the term bliss or liberation, it is through the cultivation of the Noble Eightfold Path, in the Four Noble Truths, So there isn't another sort of quicker or another what you call the faster way to experience genuine bliss or liberation from suffering without relying on the basic structure of the teachings of the Buddha. And that is something very important. At the same time, third Noble Truth, when Buddha taught the complete cessation of the suffering and the origins of suffering, which is that cessation is the third Noble Truth, which is liberation, which is also we can call, permanent bliss or long-lasting bliss, whatever term that we use, Pure Land, whatever, and that is the third Noble Truth, the Noble Truth of cessation of suffering and the origins of suffering. And that will take place, Buddha had said, that kind of liberation, that kind of bliss will take place within ourselves, within our mental state. Within our mental state, within our mental continuum, when the suffering and the origins of suffering are stopped, are extinguished, through the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path. I mean, I'm talking about Noble Eightfold Path today. I'm talking about in a very general. It is not just sometimes Noble Eightfold Path is explained in a specific way. I'm not talking about that in general. So that is something important to bear in mind. So, other ways we may think, there might be another quicker, easier way to experience, to be born in, realm of bliss without following the actual, the basic structures of the teachings of the Buddha. As far as I know, there isn't. There isn't. All the paths or the, whatever techniques or whatever, means to experience, liberation or the to experience bliss, long-lasting bliss, whatever, it is through the general structures of the teachings of the Buddha. That is the Four Noble Truths. So I would like to remind to all of us that is something important. Okay. Now then, if you ask me what is Sukhavati, or in English, realm of bliss, and the realm of bliss, or Sukhavati, in Tibetan, Dewa Jin. There are, particularly in the Vajrayana teachings, there are explanation. There are even written, what you call the guidelines, like what you call that Google Earth. When you look at Google Earth, then you will see all where you are and your places. So there are these written. If you follow this and you'll reach a certain stage, certain places, then you'll reach. There are those things. I'm not saying these are mistakes. I'm not saying these are bogus. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, what is important here is, as I just mentioned, the bear in mind, in the background of our, when we listen these teachings, and not to forget the basic structures of the teachings of the Buddha, which is the Four Noble Truths. So that is something important. Okay, now then I will read the first verse. Because the Peter and the T managed to secure the text. I'm sure you all have seen the text. Now I'll read in Tibetan first. Pujung zebe dola mise peltrishin. Lenjik tembe chidang jikba ringdo toro. Tado zebe dola poshi gonggyurba. Hami temba tseba mela chatselo. So here, this first verse is, as many of you are familiar with, the tradition comes from India. In India, when these great Buddhist teachers, and also not the Buddhists, I think also other spiritual traditions seems they do, when they engage in an important activities, they always pay homage to somebody or to something, to pay homage. And this is what Tsongkhapa has done in this first verse. Tsongkhapa, before writing the main body of the text, the first verse, Tsongkhapa pay homage to, in this case, pay homage to Amitayos, as you can see. Amitayo is the deity of long life. There are many different deities. Like, for example, in long life deity, there is a white Tara, is also a long life deity. And Amitayo is also a long life deity. In Tibetan, Tsepak me. Tsepak me. And here you can see in the last line, amitayos. Amitayos in English. So this is tsepak me. So tsepak to meba. Tse means lifespan. Pak to meba, it means immeasurable. The deity, if I translate from Tibetan into English, the name of the deity is called immeasurable lifespan deity, Tsabame. So in Sanskrit, it is called Amitayos. So in this first verse, what Tsongkhapa has done, he pay homage to the deity of Amitayos. Mm-hmm. So this in English it says, with the deeds exalted, you grant splendid unending. So with the deeds, pujung zeba, with the deeds. So here the deeds referring to, like these amazing deities, like the White Tara, in this case particularly, the deities of the long life deities, due to their, the activities, their activities, the living beings can, lifespan can extend, and so on and so forth. And that is particularly referring to this, with the deeds exalted, pujung zeba. Pujung, pudu chungwa. Pudu chungwa here in English is translated, I think, exalted. It means, which one? Yeah, I think. And pujung in Tibetan, that means the best, or that's the main in Tibetan, pujung, the best. Best. So the best deeds or the best activities, zeba is the activities. So the Amitayos activities is to prolong the lifespan of the living beings, and that's what here Dola mise peldershin, you grant splendid unending. In other words, your activities, amazing best activities, or the amazing activities towards living beings is unending, or is sort of inexhaustible. So that's what is. So of course there will be many activities, in particular in this case, to extend the lifespans of the living beings. Then the next line, once remembered, you hurl far all fear of the Lord of Death. So traditionally, there are many practices to extend the lifespan, and practices like including the White Tara mantra recitation, and also mantra recitations of Amitayos, and visualization of Amitayos, or the painting, physically painting, the Amitayos, or sculpturing Amitayos, or just remembering the deity Amitayos. And here this says, just even remembering, recalling, the deity Amitayo, that Chidachipa, you sort of, dispels the fear of death for long, yeah. So here, far, the saying, you hurl far all fear of Lord of Death, Chida, Lord of Death. Why it is called Lord? Lord, in Tibetan, Da. Chua is death, and Dakpo. So it refers to the impermanence. impermanence nature of our lives. That's called Lord, because we ourselves don't have any what you call the control. We ourselves, when death is going to come, we don't have that much control ourselves. Although we can do physically keep fit and spiritually do recitations, meditations, and so on and so forth. But by nature of this body, nature of this life, moment by moment, what's called, we are getting closer to the death. It is not our fault. It is not our body's fault. It is the nature of impermanence. So that's what here the Lord of death, refers to impermanence. Some of you may recall, this painting of 12 links of dependent origination. They quite often in front of in the Tibetan tradition, in front of the main temple, on the wall lobby, on the wall painted, and that entire 12 links of those pictures is held by a fearful, a fearful image, a fearful, very heavy, strong pranks and strong nails and like that, hold entire. That refers to nature of impermanence. So that is also here. So for us, to really what you call to dispel the fear of death is really understanding the nature of death. When I say understanding the nature of death, I'm not referring only when it comes, what kind of meditation, or not only that, this is the part of the existence, part of the life, part of the life. And that understanding is very, very crucial. And here, when it is once remembered, you in this refers to Amitayos, Amitayos, remembering Amitayos, that, dispel the fear of death, is mainly, the understanding of the nature of impermanence, understanding what you call, so that is here, once remembered. That's the second line. Lenjik in Tibetan, Lenjik means once, tenbe, remember or recall, chida, Lord of death, and jikpa, fear, ringdutor, sort of make for long distance, the fear of death, make it dispelled or long distance. Lenjik tenbe, chida jikpa, ringdutor. Tatu zeven dola pushing kongyurpa. So this is third line, which is beautifully put it saying, with the constant love, tatu, tatu, permanently or constantly here, with the constant love. This refers to the Amitayo, Buddha Amitayos, tatu, with the constant love, you look on others as sons and daughters. Dollar, tatu, that constant or continuously, permanently, with the love, you watch or you gaze to living beings as sons and daughters. Tatu, seven dollar pushing kongyurpa. Pushing like or as if your sons and daughters. Amitayos, teacher of gods and men, I bow before you. So that is, so the first three lines to explain the qualities and the benefits of the Amitayos, and then Tsongkhapa make homage to Amitayo because of Amitayo's qualities and the benefits of having that kind of connection with Amitayos. And that is the first verse. And as I mentioned, it is a tradition, and tradition has a big purpose, good purpose. When you engage in an important event, when you going to start an important activity, and beginning of that activity, sincerely, genuinely, humbly pay homage to living, to other, to great beings, to great qualities, that will reduce, that will take away that our negative pride, that arrogant mind. When we start an important project, there is a risk, a risk of occurring, this arrogant mind or negative pride. So in order to not to have that, and this paying homage, that is what also one of the purpose of writing this first verse, paying homage. So it says, teacher of gods and humans. The gods here is not talking about the Abrahamic religious tradition, or the religion where they have the creator. It is not in that sense. Here the gods are referring to, according to the Buddhist cosmology, in the Abhidhamma text, when they explain many different living beings, not just human beings, not just what we see physically on this planet, but there are many living beings who do not have the physical body like we have. And among them, there is a category of, and they call gods. So that's what Hami Domba. Domba literally it means what you call the teacher, or the so that is what here. Now then the next verse, I will read in Tibetan. Tube ongbu landang tumaru lakbar yongsong ape shingi chok dawa chendu jewe myolam ka tsewe wangi chidan nushin che. And this verse is another important tradition that Tsongkhapa had followed. Here the tradition is, this verse, what Tsongkhapa has done, he said, this is what I am going to do. This is what I'm going to do. Sometimes technically called making the promise, making the promise. So what in this verse, what Tsongkhapa had said, I'm going to write this text which the Pure Land Buddha had explained many times and praised many times. I'm going to explain the what's called the prayer, to be born in this Pure Land which Buddha had praised many times. And this is what from this verse, what we'll see what Tsongkhapa is going to do. So if you look at the in English, he said, I will write. So that is the making promise. I will write, swayed by compassion, as best I can. So this is saying my motivation. What I'm going to do, I'm going to write. My motivation is pure compassion, and that is very beautifully expressed. Tsewe wangi. It is in Tibetan. It is in the last line. Tsewe wangi. Due to the strong, due to the compassion, I will write this text as much as I can, as clear as I can, as precise as I can. So this is what in Tibetan it is in the last line. Here in English it is in the first line. As best I can. So as best I can in the sense of sometimes in Tibetan here again what we'll see Tsongkhapa is not saying I'll write accurately. He's not saying I know everything, therefore I'm going to write. What he said is as best as I can, showing sense of humbleness, showing sense of the expressing his humbleness, not arrogant, not that kind of negative pride. So that's what a prayer for birth in Sukhavati. That's what he's going to write. By the power of his compassion, land of bliss, praised again and again by the mighty Buddha. So this is, Tsongkhapa is saying, historical Buddha Gautama had praised the Pure Land again and again, many times. And now the Tsongkhapa is going to write a prayer to be born in that Pure Land, in that bliss of land of bliss. Praised again and again by the mighty Buddha as the highest of realms, highest of realms. So here, highest of realms should not be understood as some kind of physical place or physical realms or physical place. It is mainly the mental state, the mental state. The mental state which have a land of bliss or that. So it is more in the mental experience, not necessarily physically going to somewhere and then physically enjoying the environment. Although there are these beautiful places to go, but here mainly the mental experience. So this is the second verse, and which is important. What we will see in terms of that there's some kind of culture, a positive culture, and even in the writing, the first verse is paying homage before start the actual work, and the second verse here, making promise. When you, what is the name, Shantideva had said, the Tsamamyana Mazamrum, Mazamba de Chongi, Zamne Doba Michao. So Shantideva said, once you make promise to the living beings, then it is much, much better to do it. If you can't do it, then not to make promise. That's what Shantideva had said in the Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life. Samam yamna mazamrung, mazamba ni chongi. Whether you start it or not, if you can't do it, then not to make the promise. Once you make the promise, then not to stop or not to reverse that your promise. And these are the related to that. Okay, that is the second verse. Now then the next verse. Now what we'll see here, Tsongkhapa, now is the main body of the text. And here the coming lines are really explaining the nature of our current existence, nature of our unenlightened existence. So these coming lines. I will read in Tibetan. langdor mari tubu dip kongde tsundi turi sokto jing de sek shape kurwe zera jing legi chuo sibe yazo ker nagek donge bal mangbe ing mese chuda chusin karchube mito donge koti nögyoba gomedagi nyamta maro yi. So this is there we can look at into two these these lines. We can look into two sort of what you call the two parts. And first part, what we will see, or the three afflictions, the nature of our existence, nature of our, although we are no, we are not completely free from the such as the three afflictions. So in this first line, in the first what you call the three lines in Tibetan, langdor nena marik tubutik. In Tibetan, that is langdor. Langwa means to be adopted. Torwa means to be discarded. In other words, in our everyday, as a human beings, first of all. Secondly, as a follower of the teachings of the Buddha, what are the things, what are the activities, what are the mental thinkings that we should, what you call the adopted, adopted in the sense to live with, to practice, and what are the activities, what are the the mental state that we need to be discarded, that we need to be reduced. And that's what in Tibetan word it is in a two syllables nicely put together. Lang. Lang literally it means to adopt, to hold, to hold. Lang. Tor literally it means to discard. So quite often that that those two syllables, which sometimes people will say, "Can you give us an advice about what to be adopted and what to be discarded?" So that people immediately understand what does that mean. That means what to in our daily lives as a human being, as a spiritual follower. What are the important things that we should hold, that we should practice, that we should live with, and what are the things or activities that we should separate from us, that we should discard it, that we should reduce. Okay. Is that okay?
Hello.
Okay. Because today internet is not, yeah. Okay. So now, yeah. So we are talking about that, langdor, marik tubuti. So, okay. So here in Tibetan, in English, the first, the third verse, all knowledge of right and wrong covered by layers of ignorance. So this right and wrong in English, it says right and wrong. In Tibetan, which I mentioned, lang tor, what is to be, adopted, what is to be discarded. So, and all knowledge here mainly refers to, in our spiritual journey, in the spiritual journey, what is, that knowledge or understanding that we need. the layers of ignorance. The Marik Tukpu dip in Tibetan Tukpu, it means thick, and here they translated layers of ignorance. So in other words, out of the three poisons, the first line in the third verse is referring to the first poison, which is ignorance. Now, the ignorance that many of you know, when many of you have studied such as the Buddhist psychology text or some other text, when you study the afflictions. So ignorance can be in many different levels. Some ignorance may not be that much harmful, to ourselves and to others. And some ignorance may not be that much helpful for the long term. But here the ignorance is referring to, particularly here the ignorance, which is saying, layers of ignorance, is mainly referring to, ignorance that, not understanding, not seeing the things and events as they are. That is what here the ignorance is referring to. And the second line in Tibetan, Kong Te Tsongki, Turik Sok Toching, and this refers to hatred or anger. Kongto is, quite often refers in English, hatred or anger. Tsongki, by the weapon or weapons of the anger, which destroys. In here in the second line, it says, all future life in high realms murdered by the weapons of anger. In other words, the anger really destroys the virtues, wholesome, that we have created, that we have created. Hatred and anger, not only destroys some of our, beautiful things, including relationship, including friendship, including His Holiness Dalai Lama says very often, beauty of our facial expression. But the anger and hatred destroys our virtues that we have created, collected, nurtured within ourselves. Shantideva, clearly stated in the 6th chapter, in the first verse, the chapter where he explains patience. And Shantideva says, that means, the kalpatongdu sakpai, created or accumulated for many eons, the virtues, the wholesomes that you have created for many eons. Jindang deshe chelaso, jimba, such as virtues created by the generosity, virtues created by the ethics, virtues created by other activities, making offerings to the Buddha, jindang deshe chelaso. Lekje kanyi tekunjang, all those good things, all those wholesome things, lekje kanyi tekunjang, kongdo chiki jombache, kongdo, hatred or anger, just rising a moment of anger, rising moment of hatred will destroy all those virtues. And this is here, and Tsongkhapa clearly mentioned here, it says, the higher realm, all future all future lives in higher realms. In other words, all the virtues that we have created to have fortunate rebirths, life after life, fortunate rebirths, and through that fortunate rebirths, continue the spiritual journey that we have started. The next life, life after. To have just fortunate life alone is not necessarily amazing, although it's good. But during having fortunate rebirth, like this kind of human existence, then continue the spiritual journey that we have started. So the hatred or anger will really kill or really destroy those virtues, those wholesomes, to cause us to be born in the future lives, to be born in fortunate rebirth. And that's here, the Tsongkhapa used strong words, weapons of anger, weapons of anger. Chuncha in Tibetan. Chuncha is weapon, or that's what here. Kongde chunji, turi soktojin. Toric, here it's higher realms, higher in the sense fortunate. Fortunate, as we, many of you have studied Lamrim, the fortunate life, it means to have a leisure to do the Dhamma practice, to have a freedom to do to have facilities to do the Dhamma practice, and that is what here fortunate rebirth, fortunate realms is referring to. Fortunate in that sense, fortunate in the sense of to continue, have the conditions, have the facilities, internal and external facilities to practice Dhamma. And that is fortunate realm, fortunate rebirth. Not fortunate in the sense of physically how we look, environmentally what we have, although those are important. But from the spiritual practice point of view, fortunate in the sense have those facilities, have those conditions to continue the spiritual journey. And that is fortunate rebirth, fortunate life. Even if somebody is, he or she is in a last moment of his or her life, if the conditions to practice Dhamma is there, that short is for a few hours or a few seconds, that his or her life is fortunate life. So that is here, the higher realms is referring to. Then the third line, the sek shakbe kurve zerar ching. The sek, deba, desire, sepa, that means craving to the, those 5 sense objects, shapes and colors, smell, taste, sound, tactiles, and those are the desire desire objects, and of course status, all those things, and craving to those desire things, the sepa, daba is desire, sepa is craving, clinging, shakpa in Tibetan, shakpa lasso, what he translated. Okay, in English, first I will read in English. Lying, tossed it by the robes, here put robes, of desire in the prisons of samsara. So in Tibetan, yes, you can put robes, but in Tibetan, here is shakpa. Shakpa is, what you call those cowboys. Cowboys, when they go to catch their horses or their animals, they have a lasso, to throw and catch that. And that is in Tibetan called shakpa. It has although it is that is rope, but it has a particular, what you call the function. Once animal caught their head or their part of their body, then very, very difficult to come out from that, from the lasso. So the once we, our attachment, our craving, clinging to those samsaric things and events, once we are caught up by these desires, we are, what you call the, difficult to come out from the cyclic existence. And that's what here says, the desire in the prisons of samsara, Zunra in Tibetan. Dzongkhapa refers to the, the building itself. Zunra, Rawa, it is talking about the entire environment of the prison. I remember this. When I was in Jamyang, there was a time go to lead meditation in Brixton prison. Although I didn't do that, Andrew did, and I think Robin had done. Some other people had done. Our friend Steve had done. Maybe I can't remember. So the prison building is surrounded by these wires and higher walls. And that here in Tibetan, Ra. Rawa is the wall. And within the wall, there is the building itself, isn't it? So it's Ra, the six chakra, Ra Ching, bind or trapped by this here, lying toasted by. Okay, so that is the today's. I'm going to stop here, otherwise we may not be. So we have covered the first verse, second verse, and third verse, first 3 lines. And next Sunday we'll come from there. And okay, so shall we make the say the dedication? First 21 Tara prayers. Oh yeah. Om Je Tse Ma Pa Ma Do Ma La Cha Se Lo Cha Se Do Ma Nyu Ma Pa Ma Chene Ke Je Lo Dan Da Je De Zum Gue Chu Je She Je Kesara Je Wa Le Ni Jo Cha Se Dong Ge Da Wa Gun Do Kan Wa Je Ne Zi Be Sha Ma Kama Dong Da Cho Ba Na Ma Ji Rabdo Chebe Rama Rama Chanze Semu Chune Je Peme Changne Nambara Jema Jemba Zundu Gaudu Shewa Saba Samde Junyema Chanze Deshin Shebe Zoda Taye Nambara Jawa Jema Malu Paru Jimba Tobe Jawe Segi Shindu Dema Chanze Doda Rangu Yeke De Dan Cho Dan Namga Kama Jide Dombo Shagi Nende Deba Meba Guba Nema Chanze Jajin Mela Tsamba Nongla Naso Wanju Chema Jombo Rana Tesa Namada Nujin Tsoki Dune Tema Chanze Teje Chadan Peje Paro Tugo Rabdo Joma Egon Yunjan Shabdi Nende Mabara Toba Shindo Barama Chanze Ture Jiba Chembo Duyi Bao Nambara Joma Chuyi Shene Trunye Denze Dao tamje malu sema, chanze kunjo sumzen chaje, seme toga nambara jema, malu choje kolo jembe, rangi veje tsonama chema, chanze rabdo gawa jebe, ujen veje chengwa bema, sheba rabshe dudaraye, dudan jikden wando zema, chanze sashi kyungwe tsona, tamje guba nuba nyema, chonye yewa yege honge, pongba tamje nambara zhema, chanze tawe dombo oje, genba tamje shindo barama, rebe chone weba mele, tabara shindo rava zema, chanze gebe tama meda, barwe chengwe une nema, yejang yungumu kune korokai, daye pungne nambara choma, chanze sashi wala chaki, tilji nujing shabji dongma, chonye jenze yige hongi, remba dumbu namni gema, chanze dema gema shema, nyangen deshin chu nyema, sowa omda yanda dembe, digba chenpo jomba nyema, chanze kune korwa kabe, daye lune nambara gema, ige chubu ngane kwebe, digba hongle joma nyema, chanze turi shamni dabe, honge nambe sabi nyema, rira menda ratan beje, jikden sumna yewa nyema, chanze laye tsoye nabe, rita tajin chana nama, tara niju pege yege, duna malu bane sema, chanze laye tsonama gebo, hadang miam jidema, kune goja gawa jige, zedang melma ngenpa sema, chanze nima dawa gebe, jinye bola lerwa sema, hara niju dodaraye, shindo chabu rimne sema, chanze tinyi sumnam gebe, shiwe todan yanda dema, dudan rona nujun tsona, chomba ture rabjo nyema, zawe ngaji deba deda, chanze wane nishu za. Dedication. Gewa di jihoge, sanama yishe zozo shen, sanama yishe le chungbe, tamba kunye tobara, chanjo semcho rembo che, ma je panama je juro che, jeba nyamba me ba ya, 공내 공도 배워라 쇼 가래라웨 고레 신감한데 팬다데와 말을 종외네 제레세와 땡진 야조 샤베시데 바도 땡주로제 Oh, yeah. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Thanks, Ever. Yes, yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Geshe. Keep well.
Thank you, Geshe.
Take
Be
care.
well.
Take care.
Thank you.
I will see you next week.
Yes.
Lovely.
Next Sunday.
Take care,
Geshe
Geshe. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Ever.
Take care, Stella. Bye. Have a great
Okay,
week,
bye,
Geshe.
Geshe. Bye-bye.
Bye.